Welcome back, everybody, to Day 3, Kishkayhta Online Youth Conference for Métis Culture and Community. Again, I'm your host, Jason McKay from Prince Albert. I'm the Director of Education for Métis Nation of Saskatchewan. My roots are from Green Lake, Saskatchewan, and Muscadet First Nation, and Glen Murray Settlement by Kishkayhta. Today, Day 3. We're proud to present the teachings of Métis Nation Saskatchewan Elder Norman Fleury on the history of Michif and the need to keep the language alive. Also, we have returning to us the lovely Yvonne Maurice. She's going to show us how to make traditional Métis bannock, both oven and fried bannock. So we look forward to Elder Fleury and Yvonne's videos. Thank you, and we'll go to the videos. Thanks.
Hello, Tanche, bonjour. Tanche Kiawaw Anosh. Norman Fleury and Dishinik Kashon. Emichifnia. The Muyten Utanosh Ayana Vikiawaw. It's really nice to be here with you and to share my story as an elder and a person that was born and raised in a distinct Métis Michif world with language, culture, history, stories, and everything was done in the Michif language. I'm here in Rome, a long ways from home, and I'm so happy to be with you. I would love to be sitting with you today, which I am, but far away, but I'm certainly here in spirit with all of you in a Métis way. This will take a bit of time, but when you're telling your stories, like if you told your story, you'd have to do some recollection of who you are and where you come from and how you identify with just being that individual in Canada and wherever you're living. But most importantly, when we're talking about Métis identity, culture, language, and that distinction piece, which when I went to school, it wasn't part of the curriculum. So we're busy looking and trying to transition in a system that there was no inclusiveness for us as Métis. When I went to school and we took social studies, we talked about Louis Riel, the patron saint of our Métis, but most importantly, a leader who fought and died for what he believed in as a leader of a nation, of a special people that were born from two family groups to make one family group that's never ever happened anywhere in the world. According to linguists, people that wanted to know about who we are, they were flabbergasted to realize that we built our own distinction, but taking the best of our ancestors and made one story, history, culture. We developed ourselves as a people. We have our own language. And we speak other languages also. We have our own music. We have our own songs. War songs, table songs, wedding songs. And we have our own flag, a flag that was flown before Canada was even Canada. We had our own flag. We still have that flag in the color of red and the color of blue. One was from the Hudson Bay colors, one from the Northwest Company, which was our company that we formed. So those are the kind of things that wasn't there when I went to school. But we are very much people of resiliency. You in schools and where you are have now an opportunity to hear those stories, to hear the stories of the elders, which I'm an elder, but I'm also an educator. I'm also a person that was born and raised on a small farm, a small-scaled farm. And that little farm is still in the family. My nephews still own that property. And there were many, many people that lived on that property because there was that extended family unit. And people took care of each other. The gentleman that owned that land had other people that were what you would call people that had no place to live. He shared his land with those people. And that is our very unique ways as a people. We shared, we helped each other. And that's a big part of who we are, that the special people that we are, that we've developed. And today, we still have those stories with us. And now, we have built that through our institutions. We're telling stories. We're bringing people together. We're signing MOUs. We have agreements with universities. We have agreements with schools. It's that education process. Everything is based on education. Be it academic, or when I was born and raised, it was land-based teachings. What I'm talking to you about today it qualifies both. The land-based teachings, we lived on the land, we had a relationship with the land, with everything around us. We knew the transitioning to different seasons. We were prepared for those seasons. We knew the land mapping. We had that in our oral ways. It wasn't written. Now today we've transitioned to where we're taking part and we're implementing our ways in the writing system through the schools. But when my grandparents, and way, way back since our distinction as a people a few hundred years ago, the best way was our oral ways of teaching and understanding. You filed it through your generations, from generations, and you listened, you participated on the land, and there was also rites of passages. When I first went hunting and I got a few rabbits, my grandmother said, well, we're going to be inviting your friends, relatives, your cousins. I'm going to make a feast. We're going to cook those rabbits and we'll have a feast. Because now you are becoming a man, you're becoming a hunter, you're becoming a provider. So all the things that we did when we were young, my grandfather, I used to go trapping with him, fishing, hunting. They taught us the ways of understanding. I remember my grandfather caught a rabbit. It would look so cute to me as I was a child, about 7 or 8 years old. And I was going to grab, and I did grab that little rabbit to want to pet it. And it squealed so bad. And my grandfather said to me in mischief, "Kayak shitota, don't do that. Kikitimahaw, you're abusing that little animal. Kapastahonan. We'll have bad luck." Because that's not our ways. God said those animals are independent to human beings, but we still have that relationship. So today, at my age, I'll be 73 years old next month. And you know, that's many years ago, but that teaching is still with me. So that's how we got ourselves grounded and we got ourselves balanced. Where I was born and raised, on that little farm, we didn't have any kind of disturbance. The land still is the same, but there's animals there, there's birds there, there's bear. They had their way of life, but we had a relationship. We knew the sounds of different animals. We knew the language of different animals. We knew the language of the land. We knew the language. When there was going to be storms, we knew. We knew how to prepare ourselves. We were always one step ahead. That's part of our teachings. That's how we were grounded. And a lot of us are still that way. I'm still like that. We had no power. We had no phones. Till I was way older, I bought a little house. Because our log house, we should have kept that log house because it was a good place to live. And then we still lived on the land. And we bought a lumber house. And then we got power. And then we got a phone. But when we first got our telephone, it was party line, so somebody can listen in on your conversation. So we had justice to the whole system. And my mother, who was born in 1902, she left us 12 years ago. She was 108 years old. She'd be 120 now. She saw the first airplane, the first train, first car. Their mode of transportation was horses. My mom was very good they talked about her, how she was very good at handling horses and she was good at going on horseback. And we talk about COVID. They had experiences also in those days with health. They had their own medical system. We had our own medical system. Those were our systems that we had. We still have them today. We just have to learn to recognize them. In 1918, the Spanish flu, my mom used to talk about that, how they used the musk of skunk, and it healed a lot of people. And they used those traditional medicines. Her mother was a medicine woman, my grandmother. She delivered hundreds of babies. 6 daughters my grandma had, and she delivered every one of us and her son's wife's kids also. And her sister's kids, her cousin's kids, her brother's children. We relied on each other for our survival, and that's what happened in those small communities. The smaller the community, you had a very unique understanding. It was based on who you are. Until we started to move in big cities. My sister moved to Toronto. There was nothing there for us Métis. The stories weren't there. The schools weren't there. There was no legends. There was no mythology. Those kind of things were not there. My nephews and nieces went to school in Toronto. And one evening I got a phone call. It was a nephew. He's gone now. He'd be 67 years old on the 14th was his birthday. And his sister and himself phoned and asked me that question, Uncle, who am I? Who are we? And that's where we are, a lot of us, or a lot of people out there. And the elders, as educators in culture and language and distinction, it is our responsibility to make sure that we cover those areas so that identity piece will always be strong and it will remain strong amongst us. So wherever you go to school and who your parents are and your grandparents, that's number one, is family. And if a lot of our people, like my nephew, he was very young when he lived with my grandparents, our grandparents. They were great-grandchildren. They still remembered eating porridge in the morning of my grandparents. They still remembered eating bannock and eating wild meat. And they still remembered that. But there was no continuation of that in Toronto. So when we're talking about so many things, there's general ways of talking about things. There's specific ways of talking about things. It's based on understanding to find that balance of if you're a doctor, a lawyer, a student, a young child that's going to school. Today we have evolved to where we're working with Canadian Geographic. We have preschools now. Young kids that are 3-year-old, little kids going to school here in Saskatoon. I work with the school system. I work through Métis Nation, Saskatchewan, through what we are building and what we've built to collaborate, to build agreements together. Now our little kids here in Westmount School in Saskatoon, St. Michael's, north, central, and south of the province in different schools. Every language that we speak, Dene language, the Cree language, Michif French, Heritage Michif, Northern Michif, and of course English, because 90% of us speak English. That is the working language of the world. So we use English. As I speak to you in English, that's the language we understand. That's our language that we communicate with. So it's really good that we have a language. Our own language is what gives you that distinction, that identity. When I speak English, to me, I didn't speak English when I was a child. My first language was Michif. When my mother was carrying me in the womb, I heard Michif. When my grandmother delivered me, I heard Michif. Everything was in Michif. I'm very, very fortunate, and I thank God, I thank our Creator for there is a purpose for everything we do in life. It meant to be where we transition and I can communicate in 7 languages that I speak. We're all skilled. We all have different talents. You must recognize your talent. That'll help you through life, all through your life. As a young person, as an auntie, as an uncle, as a cousin, as a mom and a dad, and as you get older to be a grandfather. So you have a mechanism in your life that you can move forward. Big percentage is going to school. That's very, very important. The academic world is so, so important. But you also have to look, or should look, or must look, or I would say to you, try to find out about who you are, that distinction piece. It's very important to have your citizen's card, but then like myself, when I travel to meetings in Ottawa or anywhere, I've traveled to Europe. I've gone to Scandinavian countries to meet with a person by the name of Peter Bacher, who did his PhD on our Michif language. And I traveled with my daughter. She was 13 years old. She went to visit in some schools with Peter Bacher's daughters in Aarhus. You see, those experiences we have in life, and there was 3 other people that had PhD degrees. Chris Anderson, who now is the head of the Native Studies Department in Edmonton. Then we had Sherry Farrell-Rossett, an artist. And we had another lady, she's related to she worked out of Calgary at the university. She talked about history and her family, the Desjardins. So we all have responsibilities. And you have a responsibility to promote, protect who we are as a nation. I traveled on the plane one day with this gentleman, and I can't usually just sit there for 3.5 hours to Ottawa. So you'll either ask the person sitting beside you, well, what is the time? Or, we have a long ways to go yet. And then you start your conversation. And as soon as you start talking about nationality, well, what do you do? Oh, I work at the University of Saskatchewan with the College of Education. I'm a Métis elder. And I also am a lecturer. I'm at the staff and the faculty at the university. Oh, what is that all about? Now you're going to tell somebody about who you are and give the whole history. We weren't just born today. Being here in Rome, I live being a Michif Métis every hour of my life, every day of the year. That's who I am. That's my responsibility. To come here in Rome to meet someone who represents over 1-point-some million Catholics, which I'm a Catholic. I don't get sidetracked by what has happened. I get involved to make it better. That's why I'm here in Rome. To talk to the Holy Father, who is a representative of the world when it comes to peace and understanding. We have to remind each other and to remind our Holy Father and the clergy the damage that has been done. And if we don't talk about the truth, we will never have an understanding. The damage that happened in Canada, and here we're addressing it in Rome. We talk about residential schools, we talk about healing, we talk about empowerment, we talk about those kind of teachings. My family never went to school, didn't read or write, most of them. But they believed what the preachings were in the commandments through that big book. My family called that le gros livre, the big book. Everything is written there. They wrote in there to live right, to believe things. To look at each other in a good way in the world. When we talk about 8-some billion people on this planet, we are known. When the stories here in Rome, people are going to want to know who we are. The 3 distinct groups, or nations, not groups, nations in this country. First Nation, Inuit, Métis. What does that mean in schools? What does that mean in communities? What does that mean all over the world? The original people of a land. What does that mean? That means history, stories, belief systems, ceremonies, land-based teachings. It's a whole world view of who we are as distinct people. I remember my grandmother, they lived on the same little farm, and my uncle and auntie and my cousins, we shared this land together. I used to go to Grandma and Grandpa's mushroom and kokum's place. About 7 o'clock in the morning, I'd be there. They're eating already. They get up early, 5 o'clock. I used to think that was too early. Now I get up at 5 and 5:30 in the morning. And I don't need as much sleep as when I went to school, 8 hours, 9 hours. If I have 5-6 hours of sleep, you know what? I feel good. I'd never realized that I would be my mushroom and the way my kokum used to think, and my mom. I'm there now. That's transitioning from when you're a child, that learning process, to where I am now. And where I am now is very, very, very important time of my life, and I love it. I have a passion for who I am and what I believe in, and how I'm going to share that. You just don't grab a book and look. No, we are a book, like that big book that we went to church, the Bible it's called. Those were stories from way back, the Old Testament, the New Testament. But tradition is tradition. We still, as Métis, we do the same thing. We have our stories about New Year's. We had special stories. Christmas time, midnight mass. We had birthdays. We always remembered those people, our ancestors. My grandma would say, oh, Anoshimba Bagi Tipskam. My dad's birthday today. My dad was born today. We never knew our mushroom, our great mushroom, but she would say he hunted buffalo. My grandma's dad and her brothers, they captured buffalo calves because there were not going to be any more buffalo. And they sold them to parks. So I'm happy to say that, because when those buffalo that are in the parks today, my great mushroom and my grandma's brothers, which I called mushrooms also. See, our distinction as a people is totally different in so many ways. Our relationship. My grandma's brothers and sisters were my mushrooms and kokums. But in the non-cultured way of our Métis, that they say, how is that? Well, why do I have to explain that? That's the way I believe. That's how I live. accept it. That's what it's all about, is to be able, and now we're such an important time of our life where my grandma would tell me those stories, and then I asked her, I said, where's our language Michif come from that we speak? And she looked at me in awe and she said, she said, why do you ask me this? Nobody's ever asked that. What she was saying is that the Michif were sound people in sound Michif communities. The Michif spoke Michif amongst the Michif, no different than the English speak English amongst the English, the German amongst the German people. But when we spoke as Michif, because our relatives, the communities that are beside us, like the Assiniboine, the Dakota, and the Cree, which is Nihio, the Sodos and the Anishinaabe, the French, les Français, Quebec people, we call them les Québécois or les Canadiens. We spoke all those languages, but we spoke Michif amongst the Michif people. That term Michif comes from Métis from France, when the first child was born between French and First Nation down east. They looked at that baby and they said, oh, bakan schnack show, it looks different. These yeux bleus, you have got blue eyes. Bakan schnack show. Looks different. What's that child going to be called? So, the Anishinaabe said, or the Crees, Aptagush san. Aptagush means half of my son, not full son. And then the Frenchman said, oh, il mélangé, mixed. Dans la France, où je viens, de la France, where I come from in France, mixed cultures are called métis, and that's a word that means mixed. And then, as we've evolved in Quebec, some people said métis, M-E accent aigu T-E-S, métis. That means mixed again. That was the French and the First Nations were Michifs. Then you had the people that are Scottish, Irish, English, and First Nations. They call themselves half-breeds. Where Michifs have the Michif language, and we're Michif. Where the other part of the history, which was told by those people, but nobody tells that story now, there's very few. They had a language also. It was Gaelic, English, Soto, and Cree. They called it Bangui. It comes from the word Bangis, means a little bit of language. You see, this is what, there's so much to talk about, and it's so interesting, because now we've qualified that by visiting our history and our stories, and we're transitioning to where we're defining ourselves. We're defining, that's our definition of, and now we are Métis across Canada, and most importantly, we're known all over the world as Métis. This is where we tell those stories when we're sitting at visiting in a restaurant, or we're eating together, or we're traveling, like here in Rome. We have a delegation of Métis. We're here to tell our story. So our story is being told all over the world. But you have to tell that story with a passion, and understanding? Because we are the people now that's telling that story. We are the authors. At one time, there were authors out there that tried to figure who we were, but weren't telling the right story. So now we're telling the story. So we have to bonify it. We have to sanction that ourselves. As we build that understanding, as we build those agreements in institutions or anywhere in the world, or most importantly in Canada. And we're doing it here, north, central, and south in the province, working with the universities, working with schools. So my grandmother, when I asked her, I said, where does this language come from? And then she said, you come tomorrow morning, you'll be here early in the morning. I'll think about it. You see, our old people did not say, oh, what silly question that is. Why would you ask that? You know, they never stopped you from being inquisitive. They would always find an answer for you. They had patience. Being mothers, being grandmothers, they were very grounded. So they wanted to share with us. So my grandmother said, when I went next morning, she said, Kishkayhta Martin, I'll tell you. Thought, trying to find those thoughts about that question. She said, overseas. My grandmother never went overseas, but our veterans went overseas, her nephews, her grandchildren went overseas. They came back and brought the stories of Europe, of the war. I would tell Le Monde Week walk. Says people live over the waters. The French speak French, the English speak English, the Germans speak German. And here, now on this land, she said, the First Nations, Dakota speak Dakota, the Cree and Nihiyawewok, and Shnabemok. They were all given a language, a culture, a distinction, and a way of life. And she said, she said, everything is round and the world is round. It seems to have that concept, the circular concept of life. It's like the way of life. It goes and it keeps going, like our infinity sign. It never ending. It goes forever. God, because everything we talked about as indigenous people, Métis people, it was all related to the spirit. The spirits here, the spirits in heaven, the spirits, everything has spirits. Said God said, you know what? It's like this table is round. But it didn't come to a close. She said, us as Michifs, God created us and we finished that circle of life. And He gave us everything that He gave everybody. But we built it. Our language, our land, our stories, our history, our songs, our ceremonies. All these legends, mythology. We have it all. It was given to us because she said, this is a God-given language, a spiritual language, a language of the land. And when linguists, I told Peter Bacher that story, he said there's no linguist could ever come up with that definition. That person, that Michif that was created in a special way, created that. That's why it's so sound. And then there's my sister's story. She's gone now. She was born 1925, our oldest sister. She said, I went and visited her in St. Lazare, Manitoba. And she asked me, she said, it must be hard to go out there in the world, and especially in schools, old schooled ways and systems like universities and schools, to go and tell our language, our story in English. And I never thought of that. But it made a lot of sense, because here I am. I said, yes, it's very tough. I said, now that you've mentioned it, because I said, now I have to think in Michif and tell it in English. The only thing I don't like, I said, is I try not to anglicize us. We have to be Michifs. We have to be Michifs that Michifies our stories. Because otherwise, assimilation is alive and well if you allow it to happen. But now we're in that time of life where we're trying to bring that together. So that was a very, very good story, and I love it. I teach at the university. I've taught the first ever accredited course in Brandon University, and my daughter came to university with me. That was neat to have somebody there like your daughter that, hey, I went to school and Dad was teaching. You see, we got to bring those things together, infuse that, formulate it into a family, because our language, Michif, the oral ways, is family, trade, and ceremony. That's the three usages of our language. So when I'm at the university, I want to tell the story about who we are. But when you're teaching language, you can do that through your history, your stories. But if it's not done in Michif, it's not just about where we're teaching Michif where it's just about words. Yes, words are very important, but you have to define and you have to put those in the right perspective. If you're going to talk about different themes in language, hunting, fishing, storytelling, legends, you have to use those specifically about horses, dogs, farming, ranching, and now welding, and also working in mines. What language do you use? So this is where this first ever dictionary I did in Canada. There was a dictionary our relatives did in Belcourt, North Dakota. Patlin Lavardure and Ida Rosalard with a linguist, John Crawford. They did a wonderful job. That was a dictionary the first time in the world. Those are our relatives. That's our family. And then I said, oh, let's do that here too. So I did the first dictionary, and then other people, other elders, other teachers of Michif are teaching out there. So we're building. We still have to come together, and we have to have those discussions where now we can have workshops. We can have conferences. We can tell our stories. We have to say it's all good, regardless how you write it, phonetically, or now we have a writing system, a double vowel system, which is different to the system in the United States. But it's all Michif. That's what's so important. It's all Michif. So I'd like to leave you with, we find a place to build our distinction where we are. And here we're doing it as family, as community people, as people are part of our own government. As we transition, we build that foundation for all of us. We sign agreements, government to government. We're self-determined, self-government. And we build all those things: housing, economic development, language, our own needs in terms of where we are, where we're going. That's all happening, and I'm so happy to be part of a government, a system that we have. It's our own distinct system. With all that distinction, we're building distinction as we continue. So with that, I would like to tell you that you're in a good place. You have my support. You have the support of other elders. You have the support of the communities. As we transition, we build strength. We continue together. We have all of us working together. That's what's so important. And you're the future. This is what I'd like to tell you. I'm the past, and I'm the future through all of you. You're the future. I'm not the future now. I'm the past with a solid distinction, solid teachings and understanding. I share with you. So you are now responsible to be that future for our nation. Our children, our grandchildren are our future. You are the future. So with that, Kishkayhta Egipep Natohtamek to come and listen. Epehtawiyek, you're hearing me. And I'm one of many resources from the elders' perspective and our leaders. So Kishkayhta, you take care and stay safe, healthy, and keep doing the good work. Just stay involved. Thank you. Merci.
I put 2 cups of flour, baking powder, 1.5 tablespoons. I would put. I usually put a little bit more baking powder. I like my bannock. Then I whisk it around, and then I put syrup on it. 1/4 of syrup. 1/3 cup oil. 1.5 cups of water. Oven. It's not hard to make oven bannock. You have to do it a little bit only, like you don't try to make it hard, because your bannock goes hard. I put too much water in it, and I should have put just 1 cup. But I can add some flour into it. It goes really hard if you knead it too much. I never used to know that, but I learned along the way. But if you do it too long, and then it goes hard. See how soft it is? Put it in your pan before you... And then you fork it, and then you throw it in the oven. This is not hard to make. But you have to fork it through, it'll burn through. Okay, throw it in the oven. The oil has to be warm before you throw in your bannock when you're going to do the fried bannock. 2 cups of flour. And I put a little bit more baking powder because it goes on my bannock to be fluffy and soft. And you put a little bit more baking powder, it usually does that. 1 egg on your bannock, 1/3 of syrup, 1/2 you put Half a cup of milk here. And then you add water. If you make it a little sticky, your fried bannock, it goes really, really soft. There's the fried bannock. If you knead it too much and then it goes hard, it doesn't turn out right.
So my grandparents taught me a lot of this stuff, which they learned from
See, it's not even hot yet. You really have to watch it so you don't brown it right away because the middle will be raw. You're boiling your bannock in oil. When I bake bannock, I keep turning it because there's always bubbles on top. And when you keep turning like this, there's no bubbles on top.
Oh, I didn't see you guys there. Tansigia, Samson Nasika's son. How are you doing? My name is Samson, and I want to teach you guys a little bit about the spoons and the Red River Jig, La Danse de la Rivière Rouge. We're going to play it to the Red River Jig. So, Kayas, long time ago, even to this day, Métis people love coming together for big celebration, have really good food, and then afterwards have a dance. Someone will pull out a fiddle, la violon. Can you guys say la violon? All right. And they would play, and people would get up and dance. But if you didn't want to dance, maybe your tummy was still full, you might go in the kitchen and grab some spoons. Can you guys say les cuillères? Les cuillères. And you would grab the spoons and you would play with the fiddle. So I'm going to teach you guys how to play the spoons. Just some basic spoon playing, all right? So first thing we're going to do, you can get 2 spoons from your house, put them together, and you can play the spoons. Or you can get one of these really cool fancy ones, all right? And they can help you learn how to play too. So we're going to play on our leg. We're going to play in our hand. We're going to put our hand over top. We're going to switch legs. We're going to play down our fingers and on top of our hand too. Okay? So those are some of the moves we're going to do. I'm going to put on some music and we're going to play the spoons together. Okay? So you guys grab some spoons You're good? Okay, let's play together. You guys can follow me along if you like. All right, on our leg first. All right, in our hand now. Oh, Mia, say, good job, you guys. Back on our leg. All right, now we're gonna put our hand over top. Here we go. Wow, you guys are doing awesome. Okay, we're gonna go back in our hand. Follow what I do, okay? Here we go. Oh, Mia, sin, back on our leg. Wow, you guys are doing great. We're gonna go from leg to leg now. See if you can follow me. Oh, Mia, sin, you guys are so good. Good job. All right, down our fingers now. Oh, Mia, sin, back on our leg. This time, try to make it sound like a horse galloping. Hand over top, here we go. Oh, Mia, sin, very good. All right, we're almost done. Keep it up, you're doing a good job. This time, 2 times on our hand, 2 times on our fingers. 1, 2. Oh, Mia, sin. Last time, we're gonna go side to side like a team of horses. Here we go. Wow, give yourself a round of applause. You guys did so good. All right, so Métis people, we have lots to celebrate. Okay, so can we say Merci Jesus? Merci Mantu. Egua moistas. So thank you, Jesus. Thank you, God. And I'll see you guys later. Moistas.
Hi, Jason back here. We'd like to thank our Métis Nation Saskatchewan Elder Norman Fleury and Yvonne Maurice from Pine House for today's conference sessions. We also would like to thank all of our presenters, Métis Nation Saskatchewan Youth President Autumn LaRose Smith, Yvonne Maurice, Vince Henneque, Adam Daniel, and Métis Nation Saskatchewan Elder Norman Fleury. Their lessons were informative and inspiring. We'd like to thank all of you classrooms, students, teachers, elders, knowledge keepers. We'd like to thank you for joining us for the past 3 days. It was fun, it was informative, and I had a blast presenting to you and being your host for the Kishkayhta Métis Culture and Community Youth Conference. Special thanks to our partners at the Royal Canadian Geographical Society and Canadian Heritage. Without them, we wouldn't have been able to put on the past 3 days. So thank you, Canadian Heritage and Royal Canadian Geographical Society. Enjoy the rest of your day and continue to learn about our Métis culture, identity, values, and language. Feel free to visit the Métis Nation Saskatchewan website. Also, Métis Gathering, where we have some educational and informative videos there as well. Please join us this summer for the Back to Batoche Days, July 21st to the 24th. I look forward to seeing you all there. Come and join us for 4 days of Métis culture. Yes, so again, thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed the videos and I hope you enjoyed the presentations. Thanks again for joining us. Take care.